I was with Elliot for just over 4 years, and in the beginning, everything felt perfect. The first 2 years were the kind of soft, comfortable love people spend years trying to find. We moved in together after 18 months, something my parents weren't thrilled about, but it felt right at the time. We had the same taste in everything. We binged the same shows, mapped out new restaurants every weekend, and could talk for hours about random, silly things that somehow always felt meaningful. He left coffee on my nightstand before work, sent me TikToks throughout the day that reminded him of me, all the small gestures that make you believe you finally found your person. When he proposed on our third anniversary, I was ecstatic. It wasn't a dramatic proposal, just the two of us by the lake where we had our first date, but it was perfect to me. The ring wasn't huge, but I loved it. I took the classic ring picture for Instagram, called my mom crying, and threw myself into planning our summer wedding like it was the start of the rest of my life. But around 6 months into our engagement, things started shifting. It was subtle at first, tiny comments that felt more like pinpricks than wounds. He'd say a dress would look nicer if I toned up a bit, or that maybe I should try a hairstyle that looked more sophisticated. I brushed it off at first, but those little jabs started coming more often. Then it moved beyond my appearance. He questioned my job in front of his friends, making me feel small for not knowing the random facts he considered common sense. He made snide remarks about my family being too simple. He suggested I should elevate myself if I wanted to be his wife. And the worst part, I started believing him. I changed my hair, bought new clothes, worked longer hours, signed up for online courses because he said I needed to be more cultured. It hurts to admit now how much I twisted myself trying to be enough for a man who was never worthy of the version of me he already had. The breaking point came 3 months before the wedding. We were discussing final details when he made a comment about my dress, one he hadn't seen because I wanted to keep it traditional. He said his mom was worried I'd pick something expected instead of classy enough. When I asked what he meant, he snapped. He unleashed the cruelest rant I'd ever heard about how he'd been settling, about how I wasn't wife material, about how his family was concerned I couldn't represent him in the right social circles. And then he said it. He looked me straight in the face and told me, "You're not worthy of being my wife. I can find someone better." For a moment, everything froze. 4 years together, and that was the truth he had been hiding behind all those suggestions. But instead of crying or begging or breaking, I laughed. It wasn't planned. It just rose out of me, this sharp, almost freeing realization that I had been trying to live up to someone who couldn't even live up to basic decency. He didn't expect that reaction. He looked confused, then furious, demanding to know what was so funny. I told him he was right. We shouldn't get married. But not because I wasn't worthy, because I deserved someone who didn't mistake cruelty for standards. I grabbed my purse, walked out, and went straight to my best friend Monica's place. The tears hit later, of course. Ending a 4-year relationship isn't painless, even when you know it's the right thing. But beneath the heartbreak was relief, a lightness I hadn't felt in months. The following days were chaos, emotionally and logistically. Elliot called and texted nonstop. At first, he was angry, accusing me of being dramatic and overreacting. Then he switched to apologetic, blaming stress. Then condescending, insisting I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But not once, not even once, did he say he loved me or that he would miss me. That told me everything I needed to know. I stayed with Monica for 2 weeks while I unraveled the mess of canceling a wedding. Honestly, wedding insurance should be taught in schools. But my friends showed up for me. They helped me cancel vendors, return gifts, notify guests. My parents supported me too, even though my mom was quietly worried about small-town gossip. The hardest part was going back to get my things. I chose a time when he'd be at work, but of course he showed up halfway through my packing. He oscillated between begging and belittling, pleading with me one minute, telling me I'd regret this at my age the next, as if 29 was 1 foot in the grave. What struck me most was how his panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the image. He kept saying things like, "Everyone already knows about the wedding, and my family will have questions." Not once did he ask how I felt. Not once did he fight for the right reasons. That was the moment I knew with absolute clarity. I wasn't leaving a great man. I was finally leaving a small one. I found a small apartment across town and poured myself into making it my sanctuary. Living alone for the first time felt strange but liberating. I could decorate however I wanted, eat cereal for dinner, watch whatever shows I liked without commentary. The quiet wasn't frightening. It was healing. The first month was hard. There were moments I instinctively reached for him in the morning or drafted a message to share some random thought before remembering we weren't us anymore. But slowly, something unexpected happened. I began rediscovering myself. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned because he'd mocked them. I reconnected with friends I had drifted from because he never liked them. I realized how much of my life had revolved around pleasing someone who only offered approval when I was shrinking myself. Then came the gossip. About 6 weeks after the breakup, I heard he was telling people I'd had some kind of mental breakdown. Classic Elliot, rewriting history to protect his ego. I wanted to correct the narrative, but then I realized something important. People who matter already know the truth. People who don't matter. And to my surprise, the people who mattered showed up. Friends reached out. Some admitted they'd noticed how he spoke to me and had been concerned. One of his own cousins messaged me, saying she was proud of me for leaving. That unexpected validation held me up on days I doubted myself. Meanwhile, Elliot's texts became less frequent, but more manipulative. Things like, your favorite movie is back in theaters. Went to that restaurant we always talked about. Hope you're doing okay. Never an apology. Never accountability. Just breadcrumbs. Reminders meant to pull me back into orbit. I didn't respond. 3 months later, I was doing better than I expected. Work felt fulfilling again. I was sleeping more peacefully. My apartment felt like home. And I had even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee dates to remind myself that men like Elliot weren't the blueprint. Sometimes I missed the idea of what we had, but then I remembered the moment he told me I wasn't worthy, and all the longing evaporated. 15 months into my marriage with Wyatt, we finally bought our first home together, a cozy 90s ranch-style place with outdated wallpaper, a kitchen begging for renovation, and a backyard big enough for the dog we kept promising ourselves. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Even the chaos felt beautiful. A dishwasher flood, a family of squirrels in the attic, a sink that gurgled like it was possessed. We solved it all together. Me organizing the chaos, Wyatt taking on the heavy lifting. It felt like partnership. Real partnership. Once the dust settled, we hosted a housewarming party. Just family, close friends, nothing flashy. The place was buzzing with laughter, food, and people moving in and out from the house to the backyard. I was in the kitchen refilling the ice bucket when Monica appeared with wide eyes. She said, "Don't freak out, but Elliot is outside." For a moment, I simply stared at her. Not because I was scared, not because I was anxious, but because the idea of Elliot walking into my new life felt surreal, like a ghost returning to a place where it no longer had power. I took a breath, straightened my shoulders, and decided to face him. Not out of fear, out of closure. Wyatt found me before I even had to ask. He didn't get jealous, didn't get angry, just looked at me and said, "Whatever you want to do, I'm right here." That's the difference between love and possession, between partnership and control. We walked out together. Elliot stood by the snack table, holding a bottle of wine like it was his ticket to belonging. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired around the eyes, posture slightly slouched, like life had carved out all the arrogance he used to wear so confidently. He handed me the wine awkwardly, which made me want to laugh because it was the same brand he used to call unsophisticated. We kept things polite, civil. He made small talk about the house, the neighborhood, the weather, while stealing nervous glances at Wyatt, who stayed by my side, calm and steady. Things were fine until one of Wyatt's cousins innocently said how happy we looked together. That's when Elliot cracked. He muttered, "She wouldn't even be here without me," under his breath. I stared at him. What did you just say? He straightened up, and suddenly all the old arrogance surfaced. He claimed he had prepared me for Wyatt, that his criticisms motivated me to become better, that I should be grateful the breakup pushed me to improve. The room went silent. Before I could respond, Wyatt stepped forward, not aggressive, not defensive, just calm, grounded truth. He said, "Her growth is hers, not something you get to take credit for, and today is about celebrating our home, not rewriting history." But Elliot wasn't finished. He turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about what could have happened between us if I hadn't let you go?" Let me go. As if I hadn't walked away from him stronger than I had ever been. I felt the past rise in my chest. The night he told me I wasn't worthy, all the tiny ways he'd chipped away at me, the girl who twisted herself trying to fit the mold he created. But that girl was gone. "I don't think about what could have been," I told him, "because I'm too grateful for what is. Breaking up with you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Worthy isn't something someone else decides for you. It's something you discover when you finally choose yourself." For a second, I saw something flicker in his face. Regret, recognition, maybe even shame. But before he could say anything, Monica, God bless her timing, jumped in and casually mentioned that Daisy and Barry were expecting a baby and had just bought a house across town. Elliot froze. He looked stunned, genuinely blindsided, like he had just realized he wasn't the center of anyone's universe anymore. Not Daisy's, not mine, not anyone's. He left soon after, mumbling some excuse. Wyatt walked him out. Later, he told me Elliot asked him, man to man, if I was always this stubborn. Wyatt laughed and said, "I prefer the word self-assured." The next morning, I woke up to one final message from Elliot. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're happy." It was short, unfinished, almost hollow, but it didn't hurt. It didn't sting. It didn't reopen a single wound because I didn't need his apology. I had already moved on. I had already healed. I had already built a life that felt like mine again, and for the first time, I realized the moment he told me I wasn't worthy was the moment my real life began. I didn't respond to his message. There was nothing left to say. Some endings don't need words. Some endings are just endings, and some stories end exactly where they should, with you choosing yourself, finding real love, and finally being valued the way you deserve.